Hey, this is Eric with Corvus Lore, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Hey, this is Screaming Jack Novak from Fastest Land Animal, and you're listening to Thunder Underground.
Welcome to episode 371 of the Thunder Underground podcast. Trent here as always, and this week we've got a jam-packed episode because as you heard right there in that intro, we've got two guests on this episode. Eric Fraser, the lead guitarist for the band Corvus Lore, and John Cusimano, the lead vocalist for the band Fastest Land Animal. We're going to talk to both of them about the new music both of their bands have and a lot of other stuff as usual. But first, I need to let you know who we're sponsored by. And that would be MedFarm, a dispensary located in Broken Arrow, Oklahoma, 24683 East Highway 51. They're right off the highway. They have a drive-through, which a lot of dispensaries don't have that option. So if you call, text, or email ahead your order, you can pull right through that drive-through and quickly be on your way. But you can also check out their entire selection at leafly.com. Check out their large selection. They've got tons of staff on hand that are extremely knowledgeable. Follow them on all their socials. MedFarm OK on Instagram. MedFarm on Facebook. That's PHARM. And the website is medfarmok.com. They're always running great specials on there. And one special that's always running is if you mention Thunder Underground, they'll give you 10% off your first order, which is very cool. So don't forget to do that. And above all else, they're Cannabis with a Cause. 30% of their proceeds go to build no-kill animal shelters. So that's an amazing cause and an amazing thing they're doing. You know, most businesses don't donate a third of their profits at all time to anything, let alone something like this. So check out MedFarm wherever you're at and hit them up and tell them you heard about them on Thunder Underground. We've also got Sunset Tattoo, a tattoo shop in Midtown Tulsa. Their tattoos are done good and proper. They're state licensed, and they are mother approved. 25 plus years of experience from Jason Thompson and his crew over there. Great work you can check out. You can check out photos on the socials. Facebook and Instagram are both Sunset Tattoo Tulsa. Tons of photos on there from throughout the years. Tons of different styles that they excel in. I've had work done by Jason Thompson. I know many other people that have as well. So shoot a message or give a call over there to Sunset Tattoo to talk about a time that you can set down what work you need to have done, all that great stuff. They accept walk-ins as well. So get over there to Sunset Tattoo and tell them you heard about them on Thunder Underground. Finally, we've got DEB Concerts, a concert promoter based right here in the Tulsa, Oklahoma area. They've brought tons of great acts to the Tulsa area. Last in Line, Buck Cherry, Great White, Bisto Blanco. They've brought stuff to the arena level, like Megadeth and Lamb of God, Bret Michaels and Poison. No, actually that was Poison. I'm used to just saying Bret Michaels because it's usually just him, but Poison, all original members, came to Tulsa and played the BOK Center. They also did Snoop Dogg and Nelly and Ice Cube and all that great stuff there as well. And DEB Concerts books the Roadhouse stage at Rocklahoma every year. This year is no different, and the Rocklahoma lineup was announced just this past week. And the DEB concert stage at the Roadhouse will feature headline sets from Buck Cherry, Skid Row, Warrant, and Kix, K-I-X. Man, one of the best live bands you will ever see. The stage will also feature LA Guns. Steven Adler is going to be playing one of the stages as well, keeping it in the theme of the bands I just mentioned. But yeah, the DEB Concerts, Roadhouse stage, always a killer time. Doug Burgess has been on this podcast several times talking about it the last several years. I'm sure we'll do the same again this year as well. So hit up debconcerts.com to be kept up to date for info on upcoming shows in Rocklahoma as well. Follow them on the socials. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter are all DEB Concerts. And of course, we'll keep you up to date here as well. Recently, I did this. My last episode was 9 or 10 days ago. I didn't have one last week, but it came out for, less than 2 weeks ago was the last one, which was the Megadeth live stream from Japan with Marty Friedman review that Jason and I did. But since that point, the world lost Gary Rossington, one of the founding members of Lynyrd Skynyrd. And he was actually the last original member still alive. I mean, Artemis Pyle, who was a classic era member, is still alive, but he was not the original drummer. And of course, Ricky Medlock is in the band now, and he was in the band back in the 70s, but again, not an original member. So Gary Rossington was the last lone survivor of the original Lynyrd Skynyrd group, one of the greatest American rock and roll bands ever. And I am attempting to put together a tribute episode with someone, so that's why I'm going to keep this short and not really go into my thoughts on anything. I mean, we all know the contributions that Lynyrd Skynyrd has made to this world, and Gary Rossington, of course, was a major part of that. I mean, everybody in the world, whether they really know much about Lynyrd Skynyrd, knows Freebird, because that's been, a ongoing joke for 30, 40 years, when someone yells play Freebird at a show. What we know and love from Freebird, that slide guitar at the beginning, that amazing solo that runs on there at the end for a few minutes, all Gary Rossington. So, and there's so much more to that. Simple Man, Call Me the Breeze, Working for MCA, Ballad of Curtis Lowe. I mean, again, like I said, I'm not going to go too deep into this, but it's a major loss in the rock world. He had actually been out of Lynyrd Skynyrd here for the past, I think, year and a half, maybe close to 2 years, dealing with his health issues. And a good friend here at the podcast, Damon Johnson, has been filling his role since then, which, of course, as I assume, as Lynyrd Skynyrd moves forward on the dates they have scheduled this year, Damon Johnson will be in tow for those as well. If something doesn't happen here in the next week or two, I'll probably talk a little more about this subject, but just letting you know, hopefully that's coming up. And on that note, coming up on this podcast, recently recorded an episode with two of the members, the vocalist and the drummer of the band Crashing Wayward. Great new band. Got that episode coming very soon. I also recently recorded an episode with Terry Ailou, the vocalist of the band XYZ. And of course, he was the vocalist of Great White for about 8 or 10 years. Here from the late 2000, like 08, I think, 09 to like 2019. I got the chance to see him live a few times. It was great. We talk about Great White. We talk about XYZ. New stuff coming from them and a lot of solo work that Terry has been doing as well. And I also recently recorded an episode with Greg Upchurch, the drummer for Three Doors Down. He was also the original drummer for Puddle of Mud. And before that, he was Chris Cornell's drummer. So we talk about all of that great stuff as well with him. And that will be coming very soon as well. Lots of great stuff. Got a couple others scheduled to be recorded, so I'll announce those when they happen, but there's a few to be on the lookout for. So since this is a jam-packed episode, let's just kind of jump into the subject at hand, which would be these two interviews with these two great musicians that I had the chance to talk to recently. First up, we're going to talk to Eric Fraser, the lead guitarist for the band Corvus Lore. Corvus Lore had an album come out 3 or 4 years ago now. I believe it was 2019. It's weird, doesn't 2019 feel like a year or two ago? Because we all kind of lost that ability to tell time during 2020 and early 2021. So now it feels like there's a gap, I guess. But here we are in March of 2023. So that was 4 years ago now. But Corvus Lore has a couple newer singles out that have come out in the past few months and more music to come. So let's jump into this and hear what Eric has to say.
If you've ever been out to the Bay Area, I'm just about 20 miles, 30 miles south of San Jose. It's not too far.
Yeah, I've been to California a ton of times in my life, but I actually went to San Fran last year for the first time. Like that's the first time I'd been in Northern California. Went a couple times for work, but...
I was going to say, did you see any shows while you were there?
No. I mean, well, I went and worked a music festival, so I saw Green Day and a couple bands that were playing at the festival, but
Yeah. Green Day. There's a club out in Walnut Creek, which is close to San Francisco. It's called the Retro Junkie, and it's a really small place. Typically known for doing tribute bands, but last weekend Billy Joe just showed up with a few of his guys, and they did nothing but covers the entire night.
wow, that's got to be a trip.
Yeah, you'd be in for a surprise if you just happen to be in the neighborhood.
Yeah. Well, just kind of jumping into the Corvus Lore talk, you guys released this Romantic Traffic single a few months ago. You got the video and everything as well. You happy with the response you've gotten from fans so far?
Yeah, Romantic Traffic, in terms of the video, was I think the next step for us. The first one, Boxing Ballerina, did pretty well, directed by Mike Sloat. And but with Romantic Traffic, we've been getting a lot more pickup on college radio, and a lot of help from Valley of Fire Records and Jody Best. She's been absolutely essential in terms of like getting us in front of people that record reviewers and people that do podcasts that just otherwise wouldn't have heard of us. So yeah, we think it's been doing pretty well.
Are those two songs like leading towards another album or EP, or are you just kind of doing singles right now? Or
We do have the full album is in the can right now, so it's 9 songs. The album's called Lucida, and plan right now is just to keep doing singles. We have a third one on the books that is in the process of just kind of storyboarding some ideas, and but we've all aligned on what the next song is going to be, and I think it's going to be similar to the first 2 songs that came out. Maybe show a little bit of a different side of the band. There's some acoustic guitar on it, and but the song is great, and the production is really super. It's our friend Tim Narducci who did the production of the entire album.
okay. So do you guys have like a timetable on when you're hoping to release the full thing?
Yeah, that's I think after this third single, we're gonna then just finally put out the entire record. So for us, that's probably looking more like the March, April timeframe. We just want to get the third single out there, and then just start doing more and more dates to get more traction around the album itself.
I'd read that the debut album was recorded live in the studio.
Yeah.
Was this one done in the same process, or was this done differently?
Well, there are 2 different processes. So the first album we did in Oakland, and that was a direct-to-tape album. So the band originally wanted to just go through the process of doing something kind of completely analog. And so the Place Tiny Telephone in Oakland actually had a Neve console from the record plant from Sausalito, and recorded everything to 2-inch tape, and did the whole project in about 7 or 8 days. So that was all the tracking, overdubs, vocals, mix down, and then mastering. And yeah, it was a good process for us to go through as a band. And then I think that really made the direction clear for the second one, in terms of just going to a producer that would do everything in the box. And quite honestly, I don't really know that there's much you can hear unless you're an audiophile, or you've got expert ears to know the difference between tape versus digital. But the digital process certainly gave us a lot more time to focus on the production of the second album, and really just like how you want to lay out any kind of guitar overdubs, vocal harmonies, and just getting a chance to spread it out a bit more. It actually it happened towards the tail end of COVID, and so the person we were working with definitely had a little bit more time on his hands because his band wasn't touring at the moment. So we were fortunate enough to get like his undivided attention on our project.
So how long did the process on this one take, since you had a little bit extra time to work with?
It was probably more along the lines of, I'd say, like 6 to 8 weeks, and those are not 12-hour days every day in the studio. It's more like just trying to fit in studio time between other bands that are coming in there, and but I would say that this the second project is definitely showing some growth in terms of the songwriting for the band, and just some ideas that I think reflect more of the band's influences too. So I'm really proud of it.
Is that, do you guys write collectively as a group, or is it kind of individually and brought together?
Yeah, well, so the lead singer Ryan Jones and myself share guitar duties. I do more of the lead guitar and some of the songwriting, but he is the primary songwriter. And so Ryan will usually come in with a semblance of a verse chorus and maybe some scratch melodies. And then it's up to the rest of us to kind of flesh out the ideas. And we're kind of notorious for taking what can start out as a simple idea and usually trying to, I don't want to say overcomplicate, but my bass player and myself try to think of creative ways to just try to take different twists and turns, and while still kind of staying true to an idea. We grew up on a lot of just 70s rock, so for me, it was a lot of early Van Halen, AC/DC, and just anything that was classic rock based. And for our bass player Mike, he's definitely more of like a Beatles guy, and listened to a lot of like Yes and Genesis, and so the good thing about our band is that you don't really have to conform to any one style of music. So I just would say that Corvus Lore is more of like a hard rock band with melodies, and which is good for us because it means that we can be put on a bill with pretty much any other style of music, and try to hold a spot there without losing like the grip of an audience to know like what are these guys about. I think we can communicate that pretty well.
I mean, that kind of answers a question I had, which is about, the sound of you guys' band kind of goes in and out of different areas. Like you said, it's got that old school rock sound. It also has alternative rock sounds at times, even bluesy at times from your guitar. Like when you guys got together, was that a conscious effort to kind of make the band like that, or did that just happen from the four of you getting together?
That's a great question. I think because of the four of us kind of being along the same age group and listening to similar styles of music, that definitely is informing, I think, some of the ingredients that we put into a song. I personally don't like to write or record music that has too many gimmicks to it. So if it can really just be straightforward and written on an acoustic guitar, and then from there just kind of do paintbrushing along the top of it, I think for us is primarily how we've written most of these songs. And you're right, there definitely is a classic rock feel to it. The production technique on most of the guitar tracks really was just like taking 100-watt Marshalls and turning up super loud and keeping the gain relatively low, and just trying to keep, I would say, things within kind of a classic AC/DC style of sound. But yeah, our singer Ryan will definitely pull from a number of different influences. More particularly, I would say we listen to a lot of Zeppelin, The Cult, Rival Sons, Stone Temple Pilots, just many bands from, I would say, between the 70s, 80s, and 90s, and maybe further out than that.
It's funny that you mentioned The Cult and Led Zeppelin. When I first listened to the album, the song Beautiful Alone, the intro to that, I'm like, this sounds like The Cult. And all of a sudden, I'm like, no, this sounds like Zeppelin. And then just like within 30 seconds, it sounded totally different. When it went into the verses, I was like, wow. So I really dug that. But
that was a single off of the first album, and I appreciate it. They always say the good ones borrow from the greats, or
Right.
something along those lines. But yeah, I'm glad you listened to it and you dug it.
Yeah, so like, yeah, one of the things that jumped out to me the most of, I mean, all your guys' songs is your guitar solos. Like, how do you craft those? Do you sit down and write them, or do you kind of spontaneously do it after the song's written?
Yeah, I do a little bit of both. So a song like Boxing Ballerina, I definitely wanted to come up with a motif really for the solo rather than just kind of let it fly from the hip. So when we wrote the piece of music where I'm taking the solo over it, what I did was I actually just hummed it. Like I had the bass chords, the basic chords happening in the background, and I just let it replay over and over again, and I just started humming a melody, and then that's what ended up, for the most part, being what I did on guitar. But it's interesting that you point out that process too, because I've had a lot of my friends and other guitar players particularly point out a few solos, and the ones they usually land on are the ones that I've tried to work out as kind of a vocal idea first, and then just take it to guitar. But there's other songs where it is just kind of playing off the cuff. But I typically like to have ideas worked out. I want to do my homework, so to speak, before going in, rather than kind of wasting someone's time while you get your shit together.
Yeah, right. Well, I mean, going back to what you mentioned earlier about kind of finishing this at the tail end of the pandemic, was it kind of, I would assume it's kind of hard sitting here over a year now, kind of holding on to this stuff and not letting people hear it. Is that
Yes.
is that kind of the anticipation of getting it out there? Is that there for you?
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It has been somewhat of a waiting game, but I would say that the waiting that we're doing is for the purpose of letting singles out there and trying to get as much traction as possible for any given song. This thing was out of production. I want to say it was like February of 2021, and we've been just making videos since then. But I've also had friends in local bands that have come right out of the gate, on social media and said, "Hey, here's our album," and you'll see people responding like maybe the first day, maybe a couple days after that, and then inevitably it ends up kind of going out into the ether, and your diehards will go back and listen to it, or if you're lucky, they'll buy it. But I think there's something to be said for trying to give your strongest songs on a project a fair chance. And then after that, just kind of filling in the gaps. There's certainly songs on Lucida that are proud ones, which we know, personally have a lot of heart put into them lyrically and musically, but it may not be the strongest for a single. And so you try to make your choices, not necessarily on a popularity contest, but ones that you think will tell the story of who the band is the best in 3 minutes and 33 seconds.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed that over the last few years. You'll see bands release like 5 singles or something before the album comes out, and that makes sense because then they're on people's radar for every couple weeks, for a few months, and then the album drops. So it's a longer process than, hey, here's my album, and a week later people forgot.
Right. If you're able to release 5 singles on a song that maybe has 10 or 13, you're also letting people know, if you like these 5, then this is a strong project, rather than they've got one song or 1 or 2 songs.
Yeah. Well, kind of going back to the beginning, like, how'd you guys form this? I'd read in your bio that you guys are session musicians. I don't know if all 4 of you were, but did you guys meet through that process, or have you known each other a long time?
Yeah, actually, our lead singer Ryan was a session vocalist in Los Angeles, and I want to say this was in the early '90s, certainly before I met him. And he's had some pretty cool interactions with Bob Kulick, and I'm spacing on the name of the drummer from Steel Panther, but they had a thing happening called August Again, about 30 years or so ago. And but the bass player Mike Oneto and myself came from a couple of different tribute bands out in the Bay Area. So he and I did a tribute to Foreigner with some friends for about 8 years or so, and then I moved on and did a couple of different tribute projects. One was for the Foo Fighters, but we all kind of ended up in the same general location, and it was just a matter of meeting our drummer Joe and just having a jam over at his house, and finding out that we all had similar taste in music, and really wanting to just put every effort we could into writing original rock music together rather than playing in tribute bands, which is great. I mean, if you love playing in front of large crowds and gigging all the time, then tributes and cover bands aren't a bad way to go. But we made the decision to just do only music that we write, and really just see if there's interest in what we're doing. So yeah, I think we marked it yesterday. We've been at it for about 7.5 years now.
Is that something you had been, as a musician, been wanting to do for a long time previous
Yeah,
to that 7 years? I mean,
it is,
band,
because I didn't really consider myself much of a heavy songwriter, like somebody that would just turn on a recorder or your computer and kind of just jot down a ton of ideas. It really wasn't until personally I got together with these guys that I started just taking a lot of riff ideas and then seeing if we could flesh them out into full songs. But I have to be honest, it's been one of the most rewarding processes to really, you kind of you have to be a little bit vulnerable, because not all ideas are great, and certainly when you're writing, you have to have a semblance of, this seems appropriate for this band, rather than just writing something. Like if I threw a Frank Zappa piece at them, that's probably not the best thing for Corvus Lore.
right?
But so far it's worked out pretty well. I'd say not too many things have hit the cutting room floor in terms of like somebody brings an idea to the band and it's been completely just like not taken to the stage, which is really what we try to do after a song is written, even before it makes it on album, is try to play it in front of people a few times and work out the kinks and just see what people respond to.
Well, when you were playing in tribute bands, like you mentioned, Foreigner and Foo Fighters and stuff like that, is it easy for you to match a guitar tone?
Well, that's a really good question. For those two particular bands, I got lucky, because Mick Jones definitely came from the Marshall JTM 45 style of amplifiers. So that would be the predecessor to the 100-watt and 50-watt Marshall. So I think of like the band Free or Paul Kossoff, or just really early Marshall type tones. So Foreigner, definitely you could get away with like 90% of their songs and do it. And then for the Foo Fighters stuff, because there's already 3 guitars in that band, I just decided I'm going to occupy the space of the Marshall-y type of tones. Then we had 2 other guitar players that I could take more of the high octane guitar tones, where they're needed in certain songs. But yeah, that I tend to like, from a guitar standpoint, a really direct signal path. So while I could probably take a modeling amp system, or like a Kemper or a Line 6, and try to match every guitar tone perfectly, I really just try to figure out how to do it with my own setup and just change the effects through my pedal board and go that route.
As far as you're playing with Corvus Lore, like whenever you and Ryan first started playing together, like how do you feel you guys meshed? Did you mesh pretty easy as guitarists, or did it take a bit for the chemistry?
Yeah, we definitely did. We're of similar ages. He was born in the LA area, and so was I. I was born in Orange County, but moved to San Jose like in 1971. But we both have the very similar guitar tastes, and in music and in players. and Ryan is just a rock solid rhythm player. So that he like when we did Lucida, let's say a song has like 4 or 5 guitar parts in overdubs, then I usually just take the stuff that is the painting on the top and filling in gaps, and he's running everything straight down the middle in terms of like the basic chord structures of the songs. Um, and oddly enough, he likes to tune his guitars in a ton of different tunings in a good way. So a lot of it is, in the kind of the Jimmy Page style of DAD, GAD, or DAG-GAD, but there's also he does some other tunings that really just for him it speaks to him in a way where he feels comfortable singing over it, and it gives the song a little bit more intrigue. Are you a guitar player?
No.
Oh,
No.
well, I was just going to say that we don't write a whole lot of songs that just use bar chords, or if you think like a two-note guitar chord structure, we're typically like trying to play off of each other in using chord inversions and things like that, just to broaden the spectrum of the sound and to help out the vocal melody.
Well, going back, like, who is there a specific guitarist when you were a kid that made you want to be a guitarist, or
For
is
sure,
it just a collection of a bunch of different guys?
100%. I started playing guitar at age 12, so that was probably around 1983. And in that time frame, Randy Rhoads, for sure, was a huge influence. Same with Eddie Van Halen and early AC/DC. But my brother was actually playing bass. He's a year and a half older than me, so he picked up the bass first, and I was lucky enough to get a guitar underneath the Christmas tree like that same year. And so I had the benefit of learning songs and trying to cop the riffs of these guys with my brother at an early age. And he certainly enlightened me to more of the progressive side of rock. I know a year and a half doesn't sound that much older, but he definitely was listening to a lot of Rush and Genesis and Yes and John McLaughlin and Mahavishnu. Steely Dan, it just goes on and on. So for me, that was just like a healthy balance to really get a flavor for not everything is shredding guitar, and it just gets down to writing great music. And so yeah, that's when I picked it up.
Well, after you guys were both playing, did you guys ever have a band together or anything?
We did.
Really?
Yeah, we did. So he and I were in a Latin rock band in the year 2000. So gosh, that's 23 years ago. That band was signed to Sony EMI, and so we recorded our first album out in Madrid, Spain, and did TV and radio and a number of concerts, and that project lasted maybe 1 or 2 CDs, and then we had to kind of terminate that project and move on to other things. But it was really it really was just like trial by fire, to be in the machine at a record label, just seeing, working with other artists that are on the label. We certainly did our fair share of showcasing to labels before we got signed. But for me personally, having, been in a band with my brother was one of the highlights of my musical career.
Well, I mean, speaking of that, like, I know labels are way different now, but like, how is Valley of Fire like working with you guys? Like, how's that process been?
Yeah, night and day. So, when we were in the Latin rock band with EMI, you've got an A&R rep that finds the talent, and then gets you inside of a contract, and you get signed, and you might get some kind of an advance, and then when you go to record your record, the studio time is on your dime. You have to recoup the cost back to label. Same thing with videos, and on and on and on. But with Valley of Fire, number one, they're local to the Bay Area, and so their mission is to just seek out bands that they like and songwriters that they feel, I guess, resonate with them. And so we were one of the first bands to get signed with them. And it just so happened that the Valley of Fire is head up by our producer Tim Narducci and his co-partner JJ Garcia. And but anyways, you want to talk about just having a dedicated level of support in direct contact. And not only are they looking out for the best interest of the band, but they're also trying to like book gigs and get you in front of promoters and get the band outside of the Bay Area. So it's been really great. And I can't say enough good things about Valley of Fire. So any social post I ever do, I'm always hashtagging them. I try to promote Valley of Fire as much as possible because they deserve it.
Well, speaking of shows or getting shows, I've read that. I mean, my favorite band growing up is Guns N' Roses.
Yeah,
And I read you guys have this show with Hookers and Blow coming up at the end of the month.
we
At the
do.
Whiskey.
Yeah, that's in about 3 weeks' time. We're going to be one of the opening bands at the Whiskey a Go Go, which for me, I'm going to be able to check that off my bucket list. I've played the Roxy and the Viper Room and a couple other places, but never played the Whiskey. And I'm super excited because Dizzy is going to be, I'm sure, playing a number of different tunes from other bands that he likes. I'm sure there's going to be like a hefty dose of Guns N' Roses, which I have not seen live yet. So have you seen them in their latest incarnation or?
Yeah, I've seen them 5 times since they got back together.
Wow,
And I saw them about that many times beforehand as well. So
that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they certainly have stood the test of time.
yeah. Yeah, it's pretty amazing that just bringing 2 guys back to your band can take you from an arena to a football stadium,
Yeah, the other thing I love about Guns N' Roses too is that some of the guys in the band, they're just you'll see them pop up in places never expected. Like I've seen Duff show up, at other cover gigs or just smaller venues to just help out a friend here and there. And I think I saw on Wikipedia that there's been 23 different members in Guns N' Roses. If you start their history like with Tracy Guns, and that's just incredible that they've gone through that many iterations, but they still have this longevity, which is super, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, we've talked a lot about, bands that have been around a long time. Like these days, are you still listening to the same stuff you grew up on, or like what kind of stuff do you listen to just on a daily basis?
I listen to a lot of progressive rock in terms of like stuff from the 70s still. But you know what? I would say that Apple Music algorithm has done a pretty decent job of turning me on to bands that I never would have heard of before. Like the 2 bands that I listened to a lot that were like a reference from Apple Music. One is a band out of Minnesota called Night Moves. Just think of the Bob Seger song. They sound nothing like Bob Seger, but they're really great. They write really catchy songs. The singer to me sounds like a male version of Stevie Nicks, is like the best way I can put it. And they're on tour right now. Another band is called Pure Bathing Culture, and they're out of Portland, Oregon. And so if you're into like people that just write stuff that is just more on the mellow side, I would say them for sure. And then then there's like Fleet Foxes and Band of Horses and just stuff that you can chill out to.
Right on, man. Well, I'm loving what I've heard from you guys. Looking forward to hearing the rest of this album, and I appreciate you taking the time with me today.
Cool, Trent. Yeah, I just want to say thank you for your time and hello to your listeners, and hope to get to talk to you soon.
There you go, Eric Fraser of Corvus Lore. A huge thank you to Jody Best of Best Bet Promotions for her continued support of this podcast. And a massive thank you to Eric for taking some time out there to talk to me. Glad to finally get this one out. I recorded that one with Eric almost a month ago now, I think. It was early to mid-February. So glad to finally get this one out. Corvus Lore, great new rock band out there that you should definitely check out. CorvusLore.com is the website. I'm sure you can find all the socials on there, so follow them everywhere so you don't miss updates on when the new album, Lucida, will be coming out that Eric spoke about there. Lots of great stuff there. We talked about everything from them opening for Hookers and Blow with Guns N' Roses, or with Dizzy Reed from Guns N' Roses, and that also features Alex Grossi. And then he talked about the band Night Moves, which admittedly after we finished this interview, he mentioned that, and I'm like, that sounds familiar, and I pulled it up. I found them on Spotify, and I'm like, yes, I've listened to this band before. It was one of those bands that came through, like, your recommended stuff, or I think I was listening to like artist radio for someone else, and it popped up. So very cool suggestion there from Eric. So check out that band Night Moves. Yeah, and it's not really hard rock by any stretch of the imagination, but it's good stuff. Like I said, corvuslore.com. And once again, a huge thank you to Eric. All right, let's jump into this next one. John Cusimano is the lead vocalist of the band Fastest Land Animal. He was also the lead vocalist for the band The Cringe. The Cringe had 5 or 6 albums. I saw him once opening for Tesla several years ago, which is something we talk about here coming up. Well, not when I saw him, but we talk about the fact that The Cringe opened for Tesla on a couple different tours, and now Fastest Land Animal is as well. So, a cool link there. As I've mentioned many times throughout the years, Tesla is one of my favorite all-time bands, and Frank Hannon's been on this podcast now 4 times. Brian Wheat has been on here once. So got the chance here to talk to John a little bit about Tesla, but more importantly, we talked about Fastest Land Animal and what's going on with them. Screamin' Jack Novak is actually the vocalist for Fastest Land Animal, which John kind of speaks about a bit. When the first album came out here a couple years ago, they did it under the guise of, what's the right word, just kind of secrecy, I guess. They didn't reveal their identities. They even released a cool video for one of their tracks, where they've got like, kind of has a retro feel and everything. They've got TVs on their heads, with like mouse moving and stuff. But definitely this band has tons of videos out there from the last album and even this new album. The new album, East Coast, West Coast, In Between, came out a little under 2 months ago. It's a great album if you love something we speak about is this band's sound is kind of hard to pin down. You could throw them in that pop punk category. You could throw them in like a pop rock category at times. The word new wave gets thrown around a lot. There's a lot of synths in here you can hear, and that's something that also that John plays all the keyboards and synths on this album as well. John is also the husband of Rachel Ray, and you can check him out. I don't know if there's a set schedule, but he shows up on her show at certain times on the Rachel show, usually to pair a drink with something that Rachel's making, I believe. But I've watched a lot of his videos. They've released a lot of stuff on YouTube, where it's just like a quick 4 or 5 minute video of them at home, and John's displaying a drink of his that you can try to emulate at home, but he's always got great ideas. I've watched a bunch of those, and there's some cool stuff, and I even, asked him for one here in this episode, so look for that here towards the end, but let's just go ahead and jump into this. Here's John Cusimano, a.k.a. Screamin' Jack Novak, of the band Fastest Land Animal.
Absolutely, man. I'm happy with any response. So that people seem to be digging it, and our singles are doing well, and we're about to embark on a tour with our friends in the band Tesla. I'm stoked, very excited.
Yeah, I've noticed, the videos, that you released last year, and even a couple more, I've gotten a great response. So anywhere between 500,000 to 1 million, view wise. Do you attribute that to, the first album or The Cringe or anything, or what do you attribute that success to?
Well, I don't know if it has to do with The Cringe necessarily. I mean, when we first started this band, the idea was, let's do something that no one knows who we are, and we're doing it under cover of darkness and with made up names, and
Right.
alternate personas. And that all came about because we were trapped in our houses right at the height of COVID and pandemic and lockdowns. And the two other guys in the band with me, they are members or part members of my previous project, The Cringe. But we all had the benefit of having home studios, which I'm sitting in right now. I don't know if people are listening or watching this, of having studios in our home. So what we could do during the pandemic when there was no touring, we couldn't go out on the road, we couldn't get together. But what we could do was record our parts separately in our studios and glue it all together at the end. So that was the idea behind the first record, just the self-titled Fastest Land Animal. And the process was actually really easy and kind of intuitive and fun for us. So much so that we decided for the second album, East Coast, West Coast, In Between, that we would do it again, even though we weren't forced to this time. We could get together. But the name of the album, East Coast, West Coast, In Between, is a reflection of where we all live. I live on the East Coast. I'm a New Yorker. Alphonse Castillo, our bass guitar player, is out in Arizona. Our drummer, Shark Samuels, he's in Houston, Texas. So we were literally East Coast, West Coast, In Between. And rather than having everyone travel and get hotels or sleep on couches and then rent an actual studio for 6 or 8 weeks or whatever it would take for us to have to live in the studio and record the whole album, soup to nuts, we did this process again, recording from our home studios, and it worked out great. You know, we could work on all of our parts separately. It was very efficient. Get together, decide what worked, what didn't, listen to what everyone else was doing, make the big decisions, and then, you know, go downstairs and eat dinner with our families. So it worked out well. And then, you know, we got the opportunity, before this album came out, we actually were allowed to go on tour again. The world started opening up. And we went back out on the road as Fastest Land Animal with our buddies in Tesla and started playing a lot of the tracks from this album. And we're doing that again next month.
Yeah, that was one of my questions. If this new album was recorded more traditionally in a studio, but when you guys did it the same way, does that feel natural now? I guess that you've done it twice, like recording remotely like that from each other. Is it an easy process?
Yeah, it's definitely an easy process. It feels natural. I mean, there's no substitute for getting in a room with the other guys in the band and like workshopping stuff and working through stuff. We obviously get together and, you know, prep for the tour and rehearse and do all that. But for the album, yeah, I work particularly with our producer on this record and our last, you know, God, I don't know, 4 or 5 records is Don Gilmore. He was the producer for the first 2 Linkin Park records and a whole bunch of other stuff. He's a really well-known, accomplished rock producer. So at this point, I'm so comfortable working with him. You know, for me, it's really about recording vocals because that's my job in this band. And recording vocals is such a sensitive thing, and you're singing, and you're singing to a crowd of the one other person in the room who's the producer. So Don has a way about him that makes me feel really comfortable. And traditionally, we would go into a studio, just be me and him. I'd be in the live room, he'd be in the control room, and we would just go back and forth, and I'd sing my parts, and he would know when he has what he needs to record the album, to pull together different takes and make a really good take. We did it the same way. It was just Don and me, but we did it in my studio here with him actually from, remotely from 2,000 miles away or wherever he was in California, controlling my computer so he could, press record, and then I would record, and then he'd press stop, and then he'd say, that sounds good. Let's try it this way. Let's try it that way. And we worked really quickly. I did all the vocals, backing vocals, lead vocals, everything on East Coast, West Coast, in between, in like 6 days. Maybe we were doing like 2 or 3 songs a day, and I could have done more than that a day, but I have to just be aware of my voice, and if you sing 6 hours a day, your voice starts getting a little cranky, and you got to give it a rest, have some tea, and then do your vocal exercises the next morning. But other than my voice just hanging in there, I probably could have done the whole album in like 2 days. But yeah, it's great working with Don. He's a real for me, for my process, it really works, and he's also a good friend. He's a good golfer too.
Did Don do the same process with the other parts, with the other guys for the bass, drums, and guitar?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of that though was those guys would go back to their studios. We would have a discussion. We would listen to the section they were doing, or the song they were doing, or the part, and we would hear what should be there, and then we would try out different things with all of us listening, and then we would say, that's good, but try it this way, try it that way, let's do something else. Then by and large, those guys would go back to their studios by themselves. They have a lot more facility with the technology and the technique of recording than I do. I'm kind of a chooch when it comes to that. I know just enough to be dangerous, but Alphonse, aka Johnny, and Shark, aka Andrew, are really, like, they're actually really good engineers, technically, in the studio. So they kind of did their own thing on their own. Then they would bring it back to Don and me, and then we would all listen, and it would say, that's good, let's try this, let's do something different. Then they would go back and do it on their own. So it wasn't like with them, Don wasn't remotely controlling their recording rigs from California and recording with them. He just did that with me. That, I want when I'm singing vocals, I want the immediate feedback from the producer. That works, that doesn't, try it this way, try it that way. So it's immediate. I don't have to revisit this thing that I sang 2 days ago, 2 days later, and then I forget the vibe and what was going on in my head at that point. I got to just get it all down on paper, get it all down on tape, in the moment. So that's how Don and I work.
I'm guessing the debut album was written obviously remotely as well during the lockdown. Was the second album done the same way, since you guys are in different places?
Yeah, I mean, I'm the songwriter in the band.
Okay.
My songwriting process, I owe a lot of it to this thing called the Song Game, which was started years and years ago by a good friend of mine out of Austin, Texas. He's a singer-songwriter. His name is Bob Schneider.
Yeah.
And, he's a good buddy. I have tremendous respect for him as a songwriter and as a singer and the whole thing. But we do this thing. There's about 18 or 20 of us in the Song Game. And every week, I mean, like literally every week, 52 times a year, this has been going on for years and years now, Bob sends out a phrase or a word, and he says, okay, everyone has to write a song that incorporates that phrase or word somehow in the lyrics of the song. You can record it on your iPhone. You can record it in a studio with a full band. You can do whatever you need to do. But once a week, you're recording a song using the phrase or the word of the week. So, and then you send it out, and you know that these other singer and songwriters and musicians that you have respect for are going to hear it. And but the idea is not to comment or grade anyone else's work. You just hear it, and that's that. If you want to sidebar and write someone and say, hey, Bob, I really liked your song this week, it was cool what you did with the thing, that's fine. But that's not what it's about. It's just about you exercising that songwriting muscle and knowing that other people are going to hear it. And at the end of the year, you have 52 songs. Some of them probably stink. Some of them are decent. Some of them are like kind of half thought out, and you can combine pieces of other songs with other songs. But at the end of the year, you have maybe 8 to 12 keepers, and then you have an album. So that's how I write. And I do it every week. I'm really strict on myself about it. But it's important, like anything else, like exercising your vocal cords, doing warm-ups. like, going snowboarding or skiing or just doing push-ups every morning, the songwriting muscle is a muscle and it needs to be exercised. And the more you do it, the easier it becomes for you. And then the quicker you're going to be able to, reach and grab the song out of air wherever it comes from. But so that's where all those songs came from in some shape or form.
So you're saying all the songs on the album came from that weekly process?
Absolutely. And I
Right.
remember when we first started doing the first Fastest Land Animal record, I made a conscious effort. I said, okay, so now when I'm writing songs for this song game with Bob, I'm going to make a conscious effort to make sure every song is fast, like 150 beats per minute fast. That'll be like the rule. And above, like 150 and above beats per minute, that's where the Fastest Land Animal songs exist. So they're all fast. They're all kind of punky, kind of poppy. So I did write a lot of the music with that in mind during the song game. And then, I came up, I had the songs just kept coming. And for the second album, I was still doing that. I was still doing, still am writing for the song game and thinking fast tempoed songs and kind of a punk rock sensibility. And then, you look back and you have a collection of songs or, pieces of songs that you can cobble together and make an album out of.
So do you still have, like, throughout the years, you have all these extra songs that haven't made it? Do you have them
I still
archived
have
somewhere?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm my own worst critic. So yeah, I have a lot of songs, but I don't know that they're all gonna make the next record. But I have a few now that are gonna be on like whatever the third record we do is, as Fastest Land Animal. And I'm still, writing, to this day. Like I just did a song yesterday. That was more of an EDM kind of sounding song. That might not fit in the Fastest Land Animal repertoire, but occasionally I'll diverge and do something else just out of just want to do something different, kind of bored,
Right.
want to try something else.
Yeah. I wish I could remember, but I've had someone on the podcast before that had mentioned the song game thing, that they were a part of it, and I can't remember off the top of my head who it was. I wish I have
Was
to
it
like dig back through my stuff and see if it strikes a memory.
Jason Mraz, maybe?
No.
No, I don't know.
It would have been, generally most of my guests have been either hard rock or metal, if that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's cool. So next to you, where did the idea to cover that come from? Was that something you guys had been playing live, or just a big fan of the song? Or
Yeah, well, no and yes. So we, we'll occasionally play cover songs live, and they're really fun. And it's good to find a song that you can kind of put a spin on it, and especially with playing live in front of crowds. They love hearing songs that they know and they recognize, and that can resonate with them. But we had never played that song live, and in fact, we had never, in all the albums I've recorded, I've never recorded a cover song. I just, it was all original stuff. But then, we were wrapping the album. We needed like one more song just to make it long enough to be like an actual album, not an EP. And we came up with the idea, maybe we can do a cover. And, the Beatles are the best band ever in the history of the universe. And their first two albums half of the album were covers. And then you think about artists like David Bowie, who's like one of my favorites. He would very often put like a cover song on on each one of his records. So I said, if Bowie and the Beatles can do that, then certainly we can. So then the question was, what cover song are we going to do? So we were obviously sticking with the whole, punk, maybe pushing a little bit into the new wave songs. And we were thinking, let's do a song. Could be, Husker Du was one of the bands we were thinking about covering one of their songs. Of course, the Ramones, the Misfits, maybe a Sex Pistols or the Stooges. But I thought it was important for us to do a song that wasn't so obvious, wasn't so on the nose. Like I didn't want to do, for example, like, Roxanne by the Police, or Every Breath You Take, something that is like so obviously theirs because it's such a huge song. I thought let's come up with an album track, something that's not so obvious. So not that we're gonna fool people, but yeah, we're gonna fool people into thinking that we wrote it and it's our song. We'll like put a little of our sauce on it and like make it our own, and people will be like, hey, that song sounds familiar, but yeah, that's a great Fastest Land Animal song, even though it's not. So Alphonse Castillo, our bass and guitar player, came up with the idea of Next to You. It's Police. It's on the first Police record. It's the first song on the first record. It wasn't a huge hit. It's a great song. It's got a great hook, and it's got this like super punk, punch you in your face rock energy. And we were just like, done, sold. Yeah, we're gonna do that song. So that's what we did. What we did to kind of put our own little spin on it is we added a lot more synthesizer work. We added, I play the keyboards on the record. We did a lot of vintage analog synth work instead of doing digital keyboards. Like, I don't know if people are watching, but if behind me I've got these beautiful vintage Moogs, which are like normally in today's day and age you would play a keyboard and it would be a digital thing where the sound is created in your computer and then you have the note on your screen and you can tune it, you can move it around so it fits in the tempo of the song and it's all neat and tidy, and you can like fix it later and don't worry about what you're playing. With these analog synths, you have oscillators that create the sound with transistors. You have filters, and you just basically twist and turn all these knobs and levers, and you come up with this sound that is unique, and you've never heard it before, and you'll probably never hear it again unless you take a picture of where all the knobs and levers are when you did it. And then you have to play it like live. So it's like almost recording to tape. The part's there. You can't really fix it so easily. So you gotta, make sure you nail it. And that was the exciting part for me, was coming up using these analog synths, which have this really fat, beautiful, juicy sound that, it's not gonna be as good if you do that digitally. And then playing it live, the excitement of that, and then creating a sound that's, never been heard before, I guess is the only way to describe it.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to keyboards and synths like that, did that come first for you before singing, or was singing first when it comes to music, or what?
I think it was
What did you explore first?
When I was a little baby kid, like 6, 7 years old, I started playing. I started taking piano lessons. So yeah, that was my first. If I had to say that the musical instrument I am definitely the best at is keyboards. Like I can blow on piano and on keyboards. Guitar, I was self-taught. My dad taught me like 3 chords, and I took it from there. But I'm more of a rhythm guitarist. I write most of my music on guitar, but I can't shred on guitar. But I can shred on keyboards. And then singing just also came along with it. And I'm very very serious about when I'm on tour or I'm recording, really taking care of my voice and doing my vocal exercises and trying to just have that range where I can hit those high notes that when you're in front of a crowd and thousands of people and you go like that, it hits the back of the house, it bounces back at you in the face. Like that's the fun part.
What do you do when you're on tour, say on a show day? Do you just do vocal exercises in the morning? Or you do anything directly before you go on stage, or?
Yeah, I'll do it in the morning. Sort of like going to the gym in the morning. I want to, check that box, get up, you do vocal exercises, you do your, whatever if you are working out or whatever your routine is. But yeah, it's like I took lessons with a very famous vocal trainer in New York City, and I have the session on my phone. It's about a half hour, and I press play and I sing along with it, and it's a lot of like la 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 la, like that kind of thing, like doing like scales and exercises and arpeggios. But the way he designs it is that it starts out like you're warming up your vocal cords, and then you're pressing them, and then you're getting them to really stretch as far as they can in a good way, so you have a bigger range than you did if you don't do that. And to me, it's like I have to do it. If I don't do the vocal exercises, like even mentally, it's like I'll be thinking about that if I'm on stage and I didn't get a chance to do it. So if we're staying in a hotel or on the bus or wherever we are, I'm driving my bandmates crazy because they hear me going on the Felice next door and they think I'm an idiot. But I don't care. I got to do it.
Right. Well, when it comes to fastest land animal, you've mentioned like punky, poppy, new wavy. Like how did all that kind of come together? Was this like an effort to make that sound, or was it just something that kind of happened naturally with you guys? Or
Yeah, I mean, I've always been a fan of that, of punk and new wave and bands like the Police and Husker Du and Agnostic Front and of course the Ramones and Television and all that, going back to CBGBs. But my previous band, The Cringe, that was more of a, I would call it like a classic rock meets like grunge kind of sound, sort of like The Who meets Foo Fighters meets Pearl Jam. But I never, I always had a problem with the name The Cringe. I don't know. We kind of got stuck with it, and that was the name of the band. But I always had this name, Fastest Land Animal, in the back of my head. And I said to myself, one of these days, I'm going to start a band called Fastest Land Animal. And because I think it's a cool name and no one else used it. And it's got fast in the name. So right away, that lent itself to doing fast tempo, punk rock type music, which I love anyway. So that was the idea behind that. And then, we did that first album under cover of darkness and not letting people know who we were, just to put it out there and see what the reaction would be. And the reaction was actually kind of great. People, they didn't know who we were, and there was rumors that, are these the guys from Eagles of Death Metal or Queens of the Stone Age? Who are these guys? And it sounds really good, which is very high praise for us. But then about, I guess, a few months after the release of the album, we had an opportunity to go on Howard Stern's wrap-up show with my friend Gary Delabate and John Hine and Rasan. And at that point, we had to let the cat out of the bag and say who we were. So we did. And that was that.
So as far as that goes, that means there's not going to be any ballads in the future ever?
Well, there's one song on the new album that's ballad-ish-y. It's a little slower than 150, but it's still a rock song. So yeah, I don't know if we're going to be doing like a prom dance kind of song.
Right.
Animal. Although the Ramones had, they've had beautiful ballads. I Want You Around. That's a beautiful love song.
I Want to Be Your Boyfriend's kind of mid-tempo there.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned touring with Tesla, and you've toured with them before with both Fastest Land Animal and The Cringe.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one of my all-time favorite bands. Like, what's the experience been like, touring with someone that's been around that long? Like, have you learned stuff? Has it been a good...
Yeah.
Obviously, you keep doing it, so it must be.
It is. I mean, it's funny because before COVID happened, we had been touring with them a lot as The Cringe. And then I guess maybe a year or so ago, we went back out on the road, different band, Fastest Land Animal. I was the same. The drummer, he was, we had two drummers with The Cringe. He was one of them, but he wasn't the normal drummer with The Cringe. So it was a different drummer. And then when we go on tour, even though there's three of us on record, we bring two other guys with us to cover all the parts because there's a lot going on. We got two other guitarists, one guitarist, one keyboard/guitarist. And I don't play guitar at all with Fastest Land Animal, which I did with The Cringe. So it frees me up to be more of a front man. But then we got to, bring these other guys with us to cover all the parts. So we were, sort of the same but different. But when we went back out on the road, and this was after there had been no gigs for years, or for a year and a half, So everyone involved was excited to be back out and working. We would go to the gigs, and it was all the same, obviously same band. Tesla was the same guys. Their crew were the same. The other bands on the bill were the same, and even the people who were working at the venues, we were playing a lot of the same venues, were the same. So it was like an old family homecoming. Like, hey, you guys are back! Oh my God, so good to see you. What's this fastest land animal? You're not the cringe anymore. What's going on? So it was really, it was like going, getting back together with your family. And then even the crowds, we would go on stage, and I would see people in the crowd like pointing at me, going, I know isn't that the cringe guy? I know who you are. And then they would like recognize it and like just love it. So yeah, that's my happy place, being out on tour, and specifically touring with those guys. And they've become good friends of ours at this point. Brian Wheat, he's a good buddy of mine. I talk to him on the phone all the time, and we both have homes in Italy, and we live about 20 minutes away from each other. So he'll come over for pasta, and we'll go meet him in his town and his village, and so it's all good.
The great thing about your guys' sound too is that you could open for a band like Tesla and then open for, like an alternative rock band or a punk band. Is that something you take pride in as well? Something that you could kind of fit in all those different genres and still not stand out as not belonging, that kind of thing?
I mean, I love that we can, the idea is that you want to reach as many people as you can, and to cross over, as it were, from like a hard rock crowd to a punk or alternative crowd. Man, if you can do that, you're just nailing it out of the park. Like I think Nirvana was one of the first bands to do that, or Jane's Addiction was actually one of the first bands to do that, because they appealed to the hair metal, heavy metal crowd coming out of the 80s, but then they crossed right over into the alt, the early 90s alt, and almost invented the whole alt thing. And in fact, they created, Perry Farrell created Lollapalooza, which was really the first alt rock festival, I guess, as it were.
Right. Well, you mentioned going on stage being your happy place. Like, when you compare something like going on stage live to, say, when you're on the Rachel Ray show, you're in front of an audience. Do you have a different preparation since it's a totally different thing, or is it kind of the same thing, just preparing to go out in front of people and do your thing?
Yeah, I mean, for when I'm doing Rachel, my wife is Rachel Ray. When I do her show, I don't prepare. It's like I get up there and I'm hanging out in, whether it's our actual kitchen or the studio kitchen, I'm hanging out with my wife, just having fun, making a drink or helping her cook. That's just like being at home and hanging out. I don't have to do vocal exercises before the Ray appearance.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's just, that's just me being a goofball and trying to just be myself and have fun with my wife. That's easy.
Oh, yeah. But when it comes to that, where'd your passion for mixology start? Is it something that were you ever a bartender way back in the day, or is it just something you
was? Yeah, I mean, back, growing up when I was in my late teens and 20s, I worked in a whole bunch of restaurants, and I ended up being a bartender. And I remember my first bartending gig. I didn't know what I was doing. I could barely open a beer, much less mix anything. And the guy running this event, or I think it was an event, not actually a restaurant, but it was in an event space. He goes, "Don't worry, it's going to be Jack and Cokes for the dudes, and cranberry vodka for the chicks, and you don't have to worry about mixing anything. You open some beers, and that'll be everything you need to do." I'm like, "Okay, fine." So the doors open. There's a billion people at the bar. I'm completely overwhelmed, and the first person to ask for a drink asks for a brain freeze or something. I don't even know what he was talking about. You had to pour a milky thing in a vodka and make a brain and put a bloody grenadine syrup on it. He talked me through it. So yeah, that was my first experience to being a bartender. But yeah, ever since then, I really just got a kick out of making drinks. I I can cook, but I can't. Obviously, I'm not as good. My wife is like one of the best cooks on planet Earth, but I can. You know, I know my way around a bar at this point. I make some pretty great drinks. She loves drinking them. I keep her hydrated. She keeps me well fed, and it's like a match made in heaven.
Right. I'm a big fan of whiskey. Do you have any like whiskey drinks you could throw out that are easy to make? Like, you know, obviously besides Jack and Coke, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I love doing a whiskey sour, which you can use any whiskey you want, and you do whiskey of choice, lemon juice, simple syrup, which is sugar and water until the sugar dissolves, and then shake it with ice. And if you want to get really fancy, put an egg white in there, and that will froth it up and just give us this like creamy mouthfeel, and it'll look really fancy. Put it like a nice fancy cherry on top, and you got a beautiful drink.
Right on. I'll have to try that. Cool. Besides these dates with Tesla you've got coming up in May, what else? Excuse me. What else can we expect from Fastest Land Animal in 2023?
Well, we're going to be on the road for most of 2023.
Okay.
Looking forward to it, and we got some more music videos coming out. In fact, I was just working on one this morning that we recorded in Italy in my home studio there for Next to You.
Okay.
And then yeah, I'll just keep writing and we'll keep recording, but we're going to be we're spending the rest of the year starting April 18th in Detroit at Motor City Casino. We will be out and about and touring our butts off with Tesla. You
planning to do headline days later in the year, or like?
I mean, anything's possible.
Okay.
We don't know yet, but right now our calendar is pretty full with these dates. But yeah, we definitely got room for more, and they'll just keep piling on, and we can keep you updated at fastestlandanimal.band, and all of our music's out there on all the streaming sites and all of that. We have vinyl. We have vinyl coming out, I believe, in a few weeks. So this album will be available on vinyl. We got merch. We have T-shirts and all that fun stuff. But vinyl's really important to me. Every album I've ever recorded, I've released on vinyl, and this one is no different. We released it. Released the album East Coast West Coast in between digitally. Before the vinyl, just because there's like some supply chain issues going on. So it's really hard to press vinyl these days, but we're doing it.
Right.
Happening. We just got the test pressings in last week, and so that'll be the next thing available for people to buy and listen to.
Right on. Are you do you collect vinyl yourself? I mean, of other bands?
Oh yeah, my God, I love vinyl. It's like I think it's the best way to. I mean, consume music any way you can, obviously. And I love that I have my entire record, like an endless amount of records in my phone. I can listen to anytime, anywhere I am. But there's no substitute for having a record and looking at the artwork and the liner notes and putting it on the turntable. And it's like almost like watching a movie or a TV show. You really get engaged. And it just, I mean, to me, it sounds better.
Is that one of those things have you done that your entire life, or did you get away from it for a while and come back to it in recent years? Or
no, I always listened to vinyl.
Okay.
When I was a kid, I used to listen to my dad's records, and then I started collecting my own. And then at some point they said, "Hey, my dad said, you want to take my records? Because I'm going to throw them out." I said, "Yes, I'll take them." And I've schlepped these records around with me wherever I am. And, at this point, I've got a couple thousand records, and I guess about 4 turntables, depending upon where I am. But I just love it, man. There's nothing like listening to vinyl.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, I agree. Same thing kind of happened to me with my mom. I've got like 30 some Elvis records now, thanks to her.
Do you have the original one with that looks like the Clash kind of ripped off the cover when it says Elvis Presley?
Yeah.
That's
yeah. It's not. I mean, it's not in mint condition because she like drew hearts on it and stuff. But
Hey,
I've got
whatever
it.
you got, it's
Yeah.
perfect.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah. Right on, man. Well, I'm loving the new album. I specifically love the song My Mistake, and
Awesome. Thank you.
love what you guys are doing. Looking forward to the future, and I appreciate you taking the time with me.
Yeah, man. I appreciate you taking time with me, and we'll see you out there on the road, buddy.
There you go, John Cusimano, aka Screamin' Jack Novak, the lead vocalist of the band Fastest Land Animal. A huge thank you to Jody Best, once again of Best Bet Promotions, for her continued support of this podcast throughout the years. Absolutely love Jody, and I absolutely appreciate the fact that John took some time out there to talk to me about the brand new album from Fastest Land Animal and quite a few other topics. Good times there. Like I said earlier, check out the new album, East Coast, West Coast in Between. It's out now. You can find it everywhere you can stream. You can also buy it everywhere you can buy music, so be sure and do that. Fastestlandanimal.band is the website. Get on there. Follow them on other socials as well. Check out The Cringe as well if that's a band that you are not familiar with. Like I said, 6 albums out there from the early 2000s up to just a few years ago. You know, it's a little more rock-centric than Fastest Land Animal is, which Fastest Land Animal, like I said, kind of sits in that somewhere between pop and punk and new wave and rock. Great mix of styles there, and they do it quite well, so check out this album. Check out this band if you have not. All right, if this is your first time listening, it's greatly appreciated. There are 370 episodes prior to this one that you could check out. There's been tons of great artists throughout the years on this podcast. Like I mentioned, Tesla. Frank Cannon's been on here 4 times. Brian Wheat has been on here once. If you like 80s rock, there's been a ton of those guys on here. Mark Slaughter has been on here. Dee Snider of Twisted Sister. Mark Kendall of Great White has been on a couple times. A couple of the guys from Kicks have been on here. Tracy Guns and Phil Lewis of LA Guns. Some of the guys from Junkyard have been on here a couple times. We've had on members of Warrant, Firehouse, Trickster, Dizzy Reed of Guns N' Roses, who we talked about there with Eric Fraser. Vivian Campbell of Def Leppard and Dio has been on here. Gene Simmons of Kiss. Bruce Kulick, formerly of Kiss. Yeah, you know, if you like heavy stuff, Alex Skolnick of Testament has been on here. David Ellefson, formerly and the original bass player of Megadeth, has been on here a couple times, as has Chris Broderick and James Lomenzo, the current bass player from Megadeth. We've also had on Shooter Jennings, Vanilla Ice. We spanned the gamut here. So just dig back through there and check out all these episodes. I'm sure that you will find someone in there that you like. King's X. Ty Tabor was on here earlier last year, and it was great, as was Jeff Tate, the original vocalist of Queensryche, John Waite, and Michael Monroe of Hanoi Rocks. How cool is that? But I could keep rambling. Glenn Hughes, one of the all-time greats. But I'll stop right now. So check all that out. TheThunderUnderground.com is the website. You can listen there. You can find all the socials there. You can also listen pretty much anywhere podcasts are heard, wherever you're listening right now. If you haven't, like, follow, subscribe, or whatever, so you get alerted for future episodes. We're on Spotify, iTunes, Mixcloud, SoundCloud, all that great stuff. Like I said, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. Follow, like, all that great stuff, so then when you see a post from Thunder Underground, all you got to do is like it, throw in a quick comment, or share it, and that's an easy, free way to help out this podcast. If you ever see me out and about, or, hit me up on the socials, or on the website there, or the email, thethunderunderground.com, thethunderunderground@gmail.com. We've got merch, t-shirts, koozies, shot glasses, guitar picks, magnets, stickers. Probably something else I'm forgetting, but, all that great stuff. All right. Once again, a massive thank you to our sponsors, DEB Concerts, MedFarm, Sunset Tattoo, and of course, a big thank you to Best Bet Promotions, John Cusimano, and Eric Fraser. And until next time.
Thunder Underground, y'all.